All right. Hi, I'm Milo Denison.
And I'm Kev Bamboo, and this is Rip It Up.
Rip It Up is a topical show about life impacting creatives around the world today.
Yeah, and on tonight's show, we're delighted to be joined by former child star Pat Cardi, who amassed around 100 TV appearances. But before we talk to Pat, Milo, I've had quite a few questions in this week asking about why on earth did you move from Dublin to London?
Well, that's basically all the Irish lads chased me out of town because of all the girls hitting on me, and because I wasn't married then, and so basically the guys chased me out of town of hooking up with all their girls.
So what it was, you just needed to get out of town?
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like a cool answer though, doesn't it?
It's not that I don't know if I believe you.
No. Basically, my wife, now wife, she was my girlfriend then. She works for Facebook. They moved her over here, and I can be an unemployed actor no matter where I live. That's the great thing about acting.
Excellent.
You can always not find work.
Cool, man.
All right. So let's get into Pat. Thank you for joining us. I'm really looking forward to this. As an actor, I love talking to other actors as well.
Cool.
Industry. So first, I guess, just tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you into child acting and all that kind of fun stuff?
Nobody said they were going to ask me that.
I can change the question.
No, that's okay.
We could get into your directing stuff too, because I see that you direct as well. So,
yeah, I've directed a fair amount of live TV and infomercials and things like that.
Yeah.
I actually decided when I was about 5 years old that I wanted to be an actor. I saw all these kids, in films and TV shows, Spin and Marty, things back in the 50s that inspired me. And I would imitate them to people in the neighborhood. And they would say, gosh, you did such a great job at that. You know how they talk to kids, but I took it seriously. I found my niche. And so we were living in New York at the time. Eventually we moved to California when I was 8. And so that's where I had to start my career as a child actor. So I was supposed to be in the 3rd grade, but shortly into the 3rd grade, I decided not to go back to school. And I started roaming the streets of Pasadena. The main drag in Pasadena is Colorado Boulevard, where they have the Rose Parade. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 9 theaters on that street. And I used to go from theater to theater talking up the managers in the morning when they'd first get there, and trying to get into the theater to help them to do whatever I could do, clean the popcorn machines, that sort of thing, in exchange for letting me see the movie. And now and then one of them would ask me, well, why aren't you in school? But which was my signal not to go back there, but some of them did let me in. So I'd be able to hang out in the theater, in the projection room. I talked to everybody that worked there to find out more. And somebody told me about the Pasadena Playhouse. The Pasadena Playhouse in that area was the premier playhouse for live theater. And so I started going there instead of the movie theaters. And, or actually, in addition to the movie theaters, I would go to the Playhouse. And there, a bunch of actors were rehearsing a play of Mice and Men by Steinbeck. And I just kept coming back every day to watch the rehearsals. And after about 3 or 4 days, I memorized the script. These folks had, every time somebody would make a mistake, I'd jump up from behind the seat and yell out their line for them. So eventually we had a restaurant that was around the corner from us that had a bar in it. And all these actors from the Pasadena Playhouse would hang out there after the rehearsals, which was very convenient for me since all I had to do was jump over the fence and I'd be home. So I would either see them at the Pasadena Playhouse, or I would, go to bed at night, jump out the window, over the fence, and go back into the bar. And they just thought this was the cutest thing ever. I mean, nobody thought to ask me, what are you doing here? And I told them I needed a job. I needed to make some money. And, they would joke, yeah, you're probably having to pay rent and all that sort of thing. So I actually did have a job washing dishes and sweeping the sidewalk, that sort of thing. And this group of actors and the director of the film got a job making a movie, a World War II yarn that supposedly takes place in the Italian underground. And so the director was giving everybody from the Pasadena Playhouse a part, and they all demanded that I got a part in the film too. So I got the part, and the director said, well, you have to, bring your parents in, bring your dad in, and because he can't be in the movie unless I, get permission.
Right.
And so I had to go home and explain to my parents that I had a part in a movie. Seriously, they didn't believe me at first. And I was whining at them saying, no, this is the truth. Go over to Tony's restaurant, around the corner. And he was like, what are you talking about? So he got in his car to drive around the block. My dad was that kind of New York Italian, you can't jump over the fence. You can't walk around the block. You got to get in the car and drive there. And so by the time he got there, I was already in the bar, and I was yelling at these guys. And I was saying, my dad's coming. There's a good chance he's going to kill somebody because he's really pissed. And as I'm saying this, my dad comes in the front of the restaurant and starts yelling. He's like, where's Bob Totten? Where's James? Who are these guys that are telling my son a bunch of crap about, getting in the movies? And somebody said, I think they're in the bar. And he went in there, and they literally pushed me down behind the bar because that would have been a big problem. And my dad says, so what's going on? What the hell? My kid comes home telling me he's going to be in the movie. And they were like, you're Pete Cardamone, aren't you? Patty is the greatest little kid. And we're going to put him in our movie. And he told us all about you and that you're Italian. And this is about the Italian underground. And we need some more Italian guerrillas. And we were hoping you'd want to be in the film. Well, I didn't hear him complain at all after that. And the owner of the bar, put a towel over my head. And when my dad wasn't looking, he pushed me out the door and said, get out of here, And so we got in the movie, and the movie was, just Warner Brothers picked it up. They showed it as a B film. Back then, there was always, two films. It was always a double feature. Not like today, you have one movie playing. Back then, you had two films playing in every theater. And so this was a B movie, and they liked it. They liked the directing so much that they hired our director to work for Warner Brothers. And he was directing like every other episode of all their TV shows they had at the time, which was like Hawaiian Eye, 77 Sunset Strip. I can't think of all of them. They had like nine shows that they were doing there. And so every time he got a script, he'd make sure there was a part for one of his actors from the movie. And immediately he'd call the actor up or a couple of actors up and say, we need to head down to the Screen Actors Guild. You need to get your Screen Actors Guild card today. You're going to be in a TV show. And literally that's how I got in. He got agents for everybody too. He had some agents and he hooked everybody up with somebody just to get started. And he researched children's agents and found out who was considered to be the best in Hollywood, and dragged me into the office and told her, this kid's good. Make sure he gets work. And from then on, about every month and a half, I was in a primetime TV show.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
I've worked for a few directors. None of them dragged me.
I was going to say that would literally be.
He was great. That's like every actor's dream.
I know.
That's amazing.
I've been in Hollywood all my life. I mean, I work behind the cameras most of the time, but as a person from Hollywood, that is a very rare story.
Yeah. Because most stories are about struggling, and then hopefully you get lucky at some point in time. But that's just amazing. And
a lot of stars are brought up by directors. That's how they get their start. They're in one film, and then they tell other directors, that type of thing. Well, that was happening to me too. I'd be in a TV show, and then his buddy was about to direct a movie somewhere, and he'd say, do you have a part for a little kid? Because this little kid's amazing. You need to see him. And then if there wasn't a part, sometimes they'd write in a part.
Nice.
but eventually the parts got bigger and bigger. There were some writers in Hollywood that were actually writing episodes for me in their series, whoever they were working for. 12 O'Clock High, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the writer's name, but he called up and asked my dad a few questions and then submitted a script to them about the son of a spy during World War II that gets left behind when his dad's out on a mission. And in order to find the dad, they had to ask the son where he was. And the son didn't trust them, but eventually he did come to trust them, and they, flew him off to wherever his dad was. But it was, there were things like that going on. I had pilots written for me, none of which sold, by the way.
But, I was just going to say, it's nice just hearing like that kind of story, because it's actually kind of, as Milo said, it's a fair rarity, and you would not get that today. Like,
right,
you may get the odd person, but if you were starting out, I don't think you get many people kind of running around getting agents.
Well, they wouldn't let you in the bar to start with now, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
No, they wouldn't have. They wouldn't have.
They definitely would be worried about losing their liquor license.
Right. And I had a drinking problem. Not that I was hooked to it or anything, but my mother was born and raised in Australia. And I'm sure there are Australians that don't do this, but I know that there are a lot of Australians that do. They literally wean their children on beer. It's like give them a little sip with dinner every night. Yeah. That's what my mom did. She always gave me a sip of beer, and I loved it. And I knew where her bottle was. And when I was old enough to reach for the bottle and open it myself, I'd pour myself a beer. It wasn't until I was maybe 10 years old and I was serving a beer to a couple of my friends in the house that my dad walked in and said, "What are you doing?" And I was heartbroken because he's telling me I can't drink beer. Well, in the restaurant, I was washing the dishes. Every time a tray came back from the bar with drinks half drunk, I would drink everything that was on the plate. He had to wake me up sometimes in the middle of the night and say, "What is the matter with you? Go home."
You need to go home, otherwise I'm going to be in massive trouble.
Yeah.
So Pat, talking of other, because obviously then you went on to appear in, tons and tons of, TV shows.
Yeah.
So one of them obviously was The Fugitive, which a lot of people in the UK and the US would have seen that show, and featured also the young Kurt Russell as well. So what was kind of, even though you were both young, what was your relationship with Kurt, and like how did those like paths work out for you guys? 'Cause obviously as young kids,
Kurt
you see each other a bit. But.
We didn't actually. We ran into each other at interviews, and actually before I knew Kurt, I was aware of him because he had a TV series in America called The Travels of Jamie McFeeters, and he played Jamie McFeeters. And I really liked the show, but he was also an inspiration to me to move as far as I could in the business, to maybe be as big as Kurt. God forgive. And I would see him on interviews because we'd try out for the same parts. And eventually it would come to the point where if they were seeing 5 kids, and I was one and Kurt was one of us would get the part, and I could tell when I was reading the script, they'd give us a few pages, to do an audition. And I could tell when I'm reading the script if I was going to get it or if Kurt was going to get it. So I always got like the genius and sensitive kid roles. And he always got the tough kid roles, Yeah. And at this point, we're not buddies or anything like that. We're just passing in the casting office. Yeah. But eventually, Richard Donner, the director of like the Lethal Weapon movies and Superman movies, he had directed a pilot I was in for a TV show. And he hired me and Kurt to be in this one episode of The Fugitive. And that's how we finally met. And it was great fun working with him. He was a nice guy. He was very professional as a kid. I mean, he inspired me in a number of ways. He was straight out professional. I mean, when I tried to talk, normal kid talk with him, I had to literally find something that we had in common because he had so many parts and he was basically interested in, his acting career. He was also interested in playing the drums. And that was something we connected on because I played drums too. And what was the other thing we connected on? Girls, I guess, but that's the kind of stuff that we talked about on the set. But we didn't really connect well. I mean, we didn't get together, after that. I bumped into him at interviews still over the years. There was a time when he was getting all these parts in the Disney films, and I was always trying out for them. And whenever I'd go, I'd be there at the same time as Kurt, which is kind of it would be funny for the same kids to meet at the same time at the studio for a part. And then he was already a star, and I didn't understand why they would try him out. And he explained to me one day, like quietly off to the side, he goes, Pat, he goes, we've already been negotiating for this part. They brought you in to show that there were other options,
Oh, as part of the negotiation process.
Yeah, as part of the negotiation process.
Oh, that's harsh.
Yeah, it was harsh, but and he was such a straight shooter that I didn't for a second think he was giving me a line. I mean, it was literally the truth. And I told this to my agent. She said, yeah, I thought that. She goes, have you seen him at other interviews? And I said, oh yeah, but every Disney interview that I always go in before him. And then he's still there when I leave. He's still waiting in the casting office. And she said, oh, okay, well,
sorry.
Yeah. But I mean, there were other parts that I got that he didn't get, the 12 o'clock high thing, of course, but I was written into that film. So,
well, speaking of high school films, you did star in a cult horror classic called Horror High, playing Vernon Potts, along with Austin Stoker. And can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Right. Okay. You like horror films?
Yeah, I think Kev and I are both fans of B horror films. We've had good conversations about this in the past. And
we do like the cult horror and B movie kind of scene.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed making the film. It was towards the end of my career. In fact, it probably would have been if I had gotten a full-time job somewhere, because at that time I was literally like 22 or something and no work. And at the time I was getting married, and I forget what I was doing probably working at McDonald's or something. But I finally got this part. My agent called up. I hadn't gotten a part in maybe 2 years at that point.
Oh, wow.
I'd gone on a lot of interviews. There's a thing that happens in films when you're a child actor. Even if you've done really well as a child actor, when you turn about 16 years old, there are hundreds of 18-year-olds who are flooding Hollywood to become a star, and half of them don't look like they're 18 years old. They look like they're 16. Yeah. And also, if they get into SAG, Screen Actors Guild, they can be hired on a TV show or a movie at SAG minimum. Now, I was already being paid well over minimum, so there's that. And also, for a real child actor, you have to have a teacher on the set or a social worker, and they have to pay them, and they get paid pretty well for what they do. So it really makes more sense for casting directors to be looking at these 18-year-olds. And literally, I went 2 years without anything. I think maybe a commercial here and there. I did an industrial for, it wasn't an industrial, it was an educational film, which was a sex education film, where I think my favorite line was moist mucous membranes. Anyway, I've been saying that for years now. This is my favorite line.
That's a good one.
That's onomatopoeia, isn't it? I think.
You go on a date and you say, "How are your moist mucous membranes?"
And they're impressed. Oh, you're so smart.
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Are they nice and moist? Excellent.
Moist mucous membranes.
Moist mucous membranes.
All right. So, anyway, so I wasn't working. And then these two guys blew in from Texas, and they said, we want Pat Cardi to be our monster in this film, and the agent called me up, and I went over to meet them. They worked out a price, which was above minimum, but not far above minimum. And then flew off to Dallas to make this movie, Horror High, which they said to me, this is like, it's like being a teenage Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And that basically count me in, because Michael Landon had done a film called I Was a Teenage Werewolf. So I got the part and I flew to Texas. And when I got to Texas, they told me that the film was being shot on 16 millimeter. And my heart just sank. I'm like, oh, okay, now this is the end. It's a cheesy horror film. I read the script. I made all kinds of ferocious notes and gave them to the director. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just throw in on this and make it work. And it turned out to be the thing that's probably I'm recognized more for. Not recognized in person, mind you, but when people talk about Pat Cardi, and not many do, that's when Horror High comes up.
Okay.
But shooting the film,
director take into consideration any of your notes, or was he like?
They did. It actually annoyed him, but I was a very annoying person at the time. I mean, my karma had come up to meet me right at that point in time. And said, "Okay, you've been a little." I can't say that word, can I?
You can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
You've been a little creep. So, people in Hollywood know I was in trouble all the time. And I don't know, it was just that I was angry. I had this great career as a child actor, and it's what I planned on from the time I was 5. And now I'm 21 years old, and none of this is happening. If I want to get on a soundstage, I got to sneak onto the back lot and walk through, and which is how I got one of my jobs backstage, actually, by sneaking on the lot. And so then when this happened, this Horror High happened, and then I found out it was 16 millimeter, not 13. 16 was the stuff that Disney shot their nature films with, and this wasn't a nature film. Most people don't think it is anyway. I think it was.
When you was at that age, like you kind of, like you say, you've committed all this time to that period, and then it's like you're about to launch. You're feeling like you should be launching yourself as an adult actor, but obviously you're not seeing that happen. So that must be really
a young
difficult.
ingenue, yeah.
And then and also the just with the back to Horror High just briefly. Wasn't there like issues as well with it, kind of like distribution as well, and there being like several names for the movie as well?
Yeah, I got involved in the distribution because the people that had made the film, they were a film company that made commercials and industrials in Dallas. And now they wanted to push their way into feature films. And the investors for the film, by the way, are in the end of the movie. You see them all as police officers. Did you've seen the movie, right? So they were all the police officers, and those guys were all Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, really?
Yeah, except for Joe Green, who uses the shotgun at the last shot.
Okay.
Mean Joe Green from
the Packers,
Pittsburgh Steelers, I think.
Yeah, you could be right. Yeah.
The Steelers.
Yeah.
And Abner Haynes, who was a baseball hero, but they put the money up for it, which wasn't very much. I mean, originally they told me it's around 100,000, and I think down the road I found out it was like 60,000 that they'd put up for it. But so I started talking to them about distribution, and we decided to print up 10 prints, 10 35 millimeter prints of the film to send around to theaters. And we got a sub-distributor, somebody we didn't know, but he was somebody that would work for major distributors when they didn't have a man in town, And so he worked for Fox and a few other companies, but basically you give him the film, he places it in all the theaters, and then, they send back the receipts. So that didn't happen. I mean, it got into 10 theaters. We traveled all over the state watching the film with people to see how the audiences were taking it. They were taking it well. It was all kids, all teenagers and young adults showing up. And they were filling the theaters and, doing what they do. But we didn't get any receipts. And then after they extended the film for 2 weeks, all the prints disappeared. We didn't get any money. We didn't get our prints back. And all of a sudden we were seeing ads in Oklahoma and other states where they were farming and
taking your film and
and we couldn't find the sub distributor either. I mean, the whole thing went south. So they sent me back to Hollywood basically and said, "Thanks for the help, Pat." And then they sold it. I had talked to Crown International about it, and so they made a deal with Crown, and Crown took the film. And that really wasn't any better because they distributed the film in theaters all over the place for years and changed the name, every so often. So we had no idea where it was playing. I'd hear it from people that I knew in other states, friends and cousins and that would call me up and say, "Hey, your movie's here playing. Aren't you in a movie called Trip with the Teacher?" And, no. Yeah, but we saw it and it's you. You're in the film Trip with the Teacher, And Who Bit the Teacher? You were in Who Bit the Teacher, and then on TV, they changed the name to Twisted Brain. And it was just to kind of slow us down so that we wouldn't, be able to catch up with them. Well, they never, the producers and the production team, and I was one of the partners in film, never got a dime, never got a check, and I started fighting it on my own, and they didn't want to put any money into the fight. And so I was at least able to get residuals, and not much. I mean, I got one check for like $700 or something. That was like the total of all the residuals. And so I really got to these guys and I said, "Look, this is playing on TV everywhere. There's money to be made. They played it in theaters everywhere. Let's get a lawyer." So they got a lawyer, and then he came out to visit me, and he looked and he said, "Pat," he goes, "the truth is," he goes, "they were hoping to make money on this film, the partnership, but there's a thing in place called a, what's it called? Well, it essentially ended up being a federal tax write-off. You could do this with, if you owned horses, like for horse racing, cars, automobiles that did races, motion pictures, and a few other things. If you lost all your money that you had invested in this thing, you could write off the whole amount on your taxes."
Oh, I see. So they're basically just using your film as a tax write-off and don't really care about making money.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. So they weren't going to fight it.
It's essentially real life, the producers, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
It's just
make a film that loses money and then write it off on your taxes.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. I think I thought of that when I saw the film. That's when I started thinking I need to make more, stupid horror movies.
Just write them all off.
Yeah. So is that then when you kind of started, you moved kind of behind the camera and started doing other stuff? Because like you said, that was kind of towards the end of your acting work. And I wasn't working, and I did that. And then that was in May. And then by Christmas, I still hadn't done anything. And so I called up my friend at Fox Studios, and he was a casting director over there that, we kind of hit it off as friends. And I called him up and I said, "Do you have anything on the lot I can do?" And he goes, "Oh, we don't have anything for you. We may have, next year, but, nothing now." And I said, "Well, aren't you doing a Planet of the Apes film right now?" He goes, "We're just casting it now." I said, "Well, I'll be a chimpanzee." And he was like, "No, you're too tall to be a chimp. You can't be in it, and so we went and had lunch and just, BS'd around for a while. And then I said, "Put me in the chimpanzee movie. I'll hunch over." So he took me to the line producer of the film, who was Douglas Trumbull, who did the special effects for 2001: A Space Odyssey. He did a film called Brainstorm in the 80s. I was also in a film called Brainstorm back in the 60s, totally different story. But so Doug Trumbull, who I was absolutely fascinated with because of his work in 2001 and special effects on other films. Yeah,
I
that
think he did
up.
Silent Running and a few other movies. And he was showing me the sets for the movie. And we got to talking about the sets. And then he finally looked at me and said, "So what are you here for?" I said, "I just want a small part in the film. Now play a chimpanzee." He said, "Okay, go tell Ross it's okay. You do it." Ross put me on the film for the entire month of production. So I got above scale every day, 6 days a week for that whole month, which got me through the beginning of the year. And then after that, like I said, I would sneak on the lot to go visit people I knew. John Badham was a friend of mine at the time. John Badham directed Saturday Night Fever. And by the way, he only hired me as a casting agent when he was a casting agent to be in one film, which was Let's Kill Uncle. which was kind of another twisted sort of horror film. It wasn't a horror film, but suspenseful.
Yeah, you played a young heir in that, didn't you? I think something like that.
Oh, what?
A young heir.
I had inherited money from my dead parents and was sent to live with my uncle. And my uncle was a World War II spy and hero. And he told me soon after I got there that to be very careful. There are things that could kill you out here. And on the island, we lived on an island. He said, and so as long as you're in the house, you're perfectly safe. But outside, something might happen to you. So be very careful. So he was trying to kill the kid and there was the little girl on that who was Mary Badham, who is one of my all-time favorite people. I love Mary. And Mary comes up with the idea, well, if Uncle's trying to kill us, let's kill him first. And so that's what the movie was about, him trying to kill us and us trying to kill him.
Was that filmed in California?
Yeah, it was filmed on a soundstage in Los Angeles.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we did one exterior one day.
So being in horror and kind of sci-fi and stuff, did that make you want to be in those kind of things more, or just, as Milo said, did you want to be kind of producing them more than actually being in them?
Well, at the time, Let's Kill Uncle, I enjoyed being in because it was directed by William Castle, who's one of the great horror film makers of all time, And I mean, I was a big fan of his before I ever worked with him. And he was a tremendously nice guy too. He would buy me, I think at the beginning of the film, he went to the magic shop on Hollywood Boulevard and bought the place out. And every morning before we'd start working, he'd come to my dressing room and he'd have some magic thing already out of the package open. And he would show me how to use it. This is really cool. I really love this stuff. And I just want you to show me how to use it. And I'd look at it and figure it out and go, oh, that's great. Why don't you keep it? I'll get another one. But every day, he'd do that. He never, ever questioned my acting. Say it this way, which I'd get from some other directors.
Yeah.
He never did that. He let me do it the way I wanted to. He might at one point say, look more at Uncle than looking at her, but I was always looking at her, because she and I were we were very tight,
Yeah.
And we were only she was 13 and I was 14, but, anyway, it was fun working on the picture. Nigel Green was incredible. You may have known Nigel Green from other films. He's a famous British actor. And Nigel was the only one that would give me a little bit of nudging regarding how I'm working the scene. And he'd tell me in advance, he'd say, I'm planning on doing this. And so I think it would be funnier if you were to say this line a little bit more like that, And so we'd rehearse it and he'd go, perfect. And then we do the scene that way. And then Bill would be happy with it because somehow we got this, little joke in.
Yeah.
And so Bill he never questioned us. As a matter of fact, when we rehearsed it, you do the blocking, which is, everybody moving around in the set doing the scene. He never changed anything. Other directors would say, I think, you need to stand up and go to the window when you say this. And I think you need to, look her straight in the eye. But we had already had this shorthand going between us. And when you see the film, you'll see the chemistry between Mary Badham and myself. Mary was also in To Kill a Mockingbird. She's well known for that. She played Scout Finch and she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress when she was 10, maybe 11.
Yeah, I love To Kill a Mockingbird. That's great performances in there.
And it was intimidating to find out I was working with her because she'd been nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, that was like, you've looked over the top of Mount Olympus. I'm not there yet. I'm not quite sure. But from the second I met her, I had really long hair during the interview for it when we first met. And as soon as she saw me, she grabbed my head and she started rubbing my hair and going, oh my God, you're like a beetle. I love your hair, and she was just so open and enthusiastic that we became instant friends. And that's how way it was on the rest of the film.
Oh, that's lovely. All right, Pat. So
taking up all your time.
No, this is why we're here, man. This is why I love hearing, Hollywood stories of, behind the scenes stuff. But we do have questions for you.
Sure.
And so we put this one out to the world, viewer questions of our show. So
some kind of quick fire viewer ones.
Yeah. So this one is from Irish Sally and Kotz. And they basically said, for Planet of the Apes, how long did it take to get made into the ape suit every day? And what was it like acting as an ape?
The makeup took 3 or 4 hours, but there were breaks in between. So sometimes we'd get there at 3:30 in the morning and we wouldn't get the first shot in until 10 a.m. Mm-hmm. It was a long process to put it on because the glue, which wasn't really glue, it was more like gum spirits and latex laid over that. Took a long time to dry in between layers, and all the hair pieces that they needed to put hair in, they were doing right there, on us at the time. Our first break was when we had our top piece on, which was it was the top of the muzzle and nose and brow. And when that was on and glued on, then we had breakfast because we could still eat with our mouth. Later on, they would put the chin on, then they'd put the hair, which I called the beard, and they put the big hair on. And before you knew it, you couldn't do anything with your mouth but talk. First day on the set, I met the guy who played
Roddy McDowell.
No, I met him eventually. The guy who played the strong gorilla who was against everything, the bigoted gorilla, Claude Akins. Claude and I shook hands and I talked to him and I said, "What do we do with all this?" And he said, "Come over here," and took me to the makeup table. He goes, "Now look in the mirror. Okay, now start using your face." And I mean, literally, this is what it looked like. I was like talking and nothing was moving. And he was going, now, he goes, "Start moving your face and getting expressions, And I started doing that. And all of a sudden I found things I could do to make that work. And I watched him, he was doing it and he was getting all kinds of expressions. When he talked, he looked angry. He looked ferocious, and I just had to look smart. I was like a little genius, chimpanzee guy. And I only really had one scene. I mean, I was in a lot more scenes, but I just had one speaking scene. And that was with Austin Stoker. Now, Austin Stoker didn't know that I was on the project. And we had just done Horror High and spent, a month in Texas shooting the film. And here I was with all this chimpanzee makeup on. And so when I saw him, I went over and I'd whisper in his ear, "Did you get him? Did you get the kid? Did you get the kid that was killing everybody?" And he was like, looking at me. I said, "You killed Vernon, didn't you? You killed Vernon. I think you did that, didn't you? Or was it somebody else? Was it Roger Staubach? Did he kill him?" And he looked at me and he goes, "Who is this?" And I said, "No, I really have to know who killed Vernon Potts." He goes, "You're Vernon Potts, aren't you?"
That's awesome.
So nice.
Yeah, over the years, I've had fun with actors that I worked with in the past. We were in a scene together, and that was, it was fun. Paul Williams and I did a.
That's a great question. It's kind of asked by two people, I suppose, which is kind of like with the getting into the suit and acting in it. So I think you've given them some really good insight there. We've got another one as well, which is Janib 58 in England. Asked, what would you say are the psychological impacts of becoming or being a child star? That's a really good question.
It is a good question. Yeah, I could probably talk for an hour on this. Because, some of my former child actor friends have committed suicide. And leading a bad adult life after being a child actor is endemic of what the makeup is. I think that it would have a lot to do with the parents not knowing how to prepare the kid, for life. Also, the parents have a tendency to be living their life through their kid, and when they feel all the attention on the set that they're getting, everybody wants those parents to be happy. Usually it's one parent that's on the set, which also that has tended to lead to a lot of divorces. Okay, because either mom or dad meets somebody else on the set, or they just start growing out of their head and they grow away from the marriage. And so it plays out at home as a bad situation. And on the set, everything is marvelous and wonderful. I mean, it's such a dichotomy of what's going on. And the parents living their life for the film, in a lot of cases, the parents aren't really paying attention to what the kid's doing on the set. In some cases, I've known former child actors who worked naked, girls who worked, topless or naked, because that's what the role called for, and they were all keeping it very hush hush. One girl that I knew really well, in fact, we dated when we were younger, had to do a scene with Rock Hudson where she was naked. And the scene never appeared in the film because it started getting out that this had happened. And so I think they probably destroyed the footage so that nobody could prove that actually happened, but it did. I have friends that work in special effects, and, they've done things where they had to make a body cast of a 14-year-old girl so that they could make a foam appliance for their body. And they do that nude, and it's, I'd say to these guys, you don't really have to do it nude. I mean, if you're making something to go over her body, she could be wearing a bikini or something.
Yeah,
they wanted it, and I think it was because they had to do it nude because they were using that mold to do something to the body that they couldn't actually do to a body. It wasn't an appliance. It was literally, they were going to be stabbing her or doing something. But to get back on the subject, if you started at 5 years old thinking you're going to be an actor, and you are concentrating on it so much that you're going to films almost every day, to see acting and to see how it works, and going into the Pasadena play, and eventually you actually get a part, and then all of a sudden people are treating you like you're a king. But then you turn 16 years old and that work all goes away. Now they've got 150 kids trying to take that part, and they're old enough that they don't need to hire a teacher, and they don't have to they can work longer hours. Kids only work for 4 to 6 hours a day, depending on the situation. And now you could work a kid who's 18, 14, 15, whatever hours. So you lose your sense of who you are, and what you're doing, and where you're going to go in life at this point, because nothing's working, and you're waiting for the next event in your life to happen. Maybe I'll be a younger leading man, in a couple of years, or something will happen that'll make this work. But in most cases, it just doesn't work. It just, in a lot of cases, I mean, if you look up on the internet, how many child actors have become famous? There's quite a few. There's quite a few that have, led into this thing. But it's still an infinitesimal number compared to how many kids are actually working in TV shows and series and episodics in theater. And so there's many thousands like me who did really well in terms of, having a career that just vanished all of a sudden one day. It'd be sort of like, taking your cat who's been living in captivity, and then you just drop him off in the jungle. So there's no feeding bowl anymore. There's nobody petting him anymore. And there's a lot of actors, animals looking at him as if he's a meal. I think that happens with actors too.
Yeah. Do you think that's changed at all? I'm just curious if no? Oh, really? Okay. No.
Peter Robbins just offed himself recently. Peter played my little brother in Al Miguel, which I was the star of. And he played my little brother, and we got along really great. We lost track of each other after we made the film. He was in a different age bracket than I was. He was probably 5 years younger than me. Peter also was the voice of Charlie Brown in the Charlie Brown movies and TV shows. Okay, so
Sorry,
Peter was.
I must have saw that because I remember just seeing something about the voice of Charlie Brown.
That's the connect I made.
Yeah.
He committed suicide.
Yeah, I didn't put that together. Oh wow. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and there was a lot of triggers for that too, because I mean, if I knew his mom and dad were divorced, and his mom, when we were on location, every night she'd come out of a different crew member's, room. I mean, she was just enjoying herself and playing and she just, she wasn't a good parent. I mean, I hate to say my parent wasn't a good parent. We rarely ever actually got along unless it was in conjunction with a movie or a TV show. After I became an adult, we didn't speak for years, simply because, he wouldn't help me pay for college. And I was like, I made all this money as a kid, what?
Where'd it go?
And he was like, dude, we needed that money to raise the family. I'm like, yeah, but that was your job, not my job, and anyway, I mean, I've forgiven him for it because I see what we did. I wouldn't have had the career, which I'm glad I did to some extent, but I would have been better off if I hadn't been in it. And my parents did not prepare me for this big, slump in my career. So, I mean, I went off the handle. I had one of the jobs that I finally got was a continuing role in a TV series called Apple's Way. And Jackie Cooper, who is a very famous actor in the, like with Judy Garland, they were teenagers together, and he was in Our Gang comedies. And at this point in his career, he was the executive producer at CBS of a lot of shows and things. But as a child actor, when his career broke down, I mean, he got arrested by police for breaking into homes in Beverly Hills, stealing stuff, and he was doing drugs and he was drinking. And I mean, he was just going down the tubes until he got out of the business for a couple of years and figured out who he was. And then they started asking for him again. So he got back into it, and he was a big star as an adult as well. So Jackie hired me for this show. And then when we started rehearsing the show, the woman that was playing the mother on the show had quit. So they hired somebody else to be the mom. And then when they saw us both together, Jackie called me in the office and he said, we hired this lady, this actress to be your mom, but it looks like you could be dating. She's so young, and you're an old child, you don't look as young as we thought you did. So we're going to have to let you go. And I just blew up. I just totally had a freak out right in this, because it's like, oh, I'm back in the game again, and this is going to be great. I got another series. This means I'll have a lot more exposure. And, but I just went off. And I mean, he literally held me by the back of my neck, sat me down in a chair and started yelling at me. And he told me his whole history. I mean, he must have spent an hour, lecturing me. And basically his message was, it's time for you to get out of the business. You can't be in the business anymore. You got to get out. He goes, you weren't prepared for what happened to you. This is what happened to me. You have to get out for a few years, or at least until you can take the rejection.
Yeah.
And don't take it personally. And the thing is, this isn't only with child actors. There are a lot of child actors who have had to deal with this. I talk to them every day on Facebook. There's a lot of people like me that you may never have heard of, and they had a great career. Some of these guys were in more shows than I was in, had some very spectacular parts in films with John Wayne and big stars. And now, they spent the last 40 years selling shoes. One, John Iman, did great work back in the 60s. He's been, and proud of it, he's been a cabin steward, what do you call, in airline.
Airline, yeah.
Airline steward.
Attendant,
flight attendant. And I have other friends. I have another friend that's been a flight attendant for his career. We're all old and retired now, but he's quite proud of the work that he did, and he talks about it very fondly. And that's good when we're talking about being a flight attendant. But just recently, he started coming out as an actor, a former child actor, and the roles that he played in. I didn't know who he was. I used to watch him on TV and didn't know that was him. because he was just one of those other guys, that was in the scene. And John, he's quite a nice fella, but they're out there, and there's just no accounting for, how messed up you get, and the kind of crazy things you would do. Peter was unusually over the top. He was also, what do you call it? Bipolar. And so some days he was good, some days he wasn't. We hadn't really connected too much before this thing that happened, this suicide. But when the last time I talked to him was a few years ago, and he told me, he just went into this dialogue about how he's about to kill his girlfriend. And he said, I bought her a brand new Mercedes and she ran away, took the car, and she's living with some other guy. I got a gun. I'm going to go fucking kill her. Excuse me. I'm going to go kill her. And I was trying to talk him down from there, and I couldn't. Well, he did chase her. And then the police caught up with him, and then he ran to Mexico. And then they got him in Mexico, and they brought him back. And he tried to explain, and get sympathy from the judge, but he wasn't getting enough sympathy. So he told the judge that, if the judge wasn't on the right side of things, he better watch out, because maybe I'll get out in a couple of years, but I'll be looking for you. So instead of getting maybe a year or 19 months, he got 6 years. Yeah, he got 8 years, but he got out in 6 years. And then he got in trouble again after that. So, he couldn't get it together.
Oh. Really interesting story.
We struggled to get into autograph shows, which I thought, I heard about it and I thought, oh, these poor actors, they're making a living signing autographs. I thought, what a shame. I'm not going to stick my nose into that sort of thing. That's sort of like saying you're defeated. And then, give me a second here. Brandon Cruz from The Courtship of Eddie's Father, which is a 70s TV show, or was it 70s? 70s or 80s TV show. Brandon was a very well-known child actor here in Hollywood. And Brandon and I were working backstage on something. And we ended up working together quite a bit actually after that, but not acting, doing behind the scenes stuff. And he called me up from this autograph show. And he goes, dude, you need to come down here and bring some pictures. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, the autograph show, man. He goes, I'm making all kinds of money down here. We've only been doing it for 2 hours. Bring your pictures and get down here. I said, well, I'll come down. I didn't bring any pictures. I was like, oh, this is going to be sad, And I get in there, and like the Livingston brothers from My Three Sons, and kids from this show and kids from that show. And there's, and Brand is like, old people I knew when I was a kid, and they're signing autographs. They're getting $40 a piece for these autographs. And so I said, this is disgusting, man. I said, this is really sad. He goes, sad? And he pulls like $800 out of his pocket. He's like, it's not even noon yet, dude, and puts it back in his pocket. And I thought, oh my. And then Julie Benjamin from a show I was in called Hazel comes over, and she grabs me and she goes, oh, Pat, the whole cast is here now, and drags me over. And all of a sudden people are taking pictures of us. And I'm like in a whole different world, and Brandon Cruz jumps in the middle of the photography thing, and he goes, stop, everybody stop. You don't take pictures, not for free. You sign up. And then all of a sudden I had like a couple $100 from people who were just standing there taking pictures of me, So I thought, okay, now how do I do this? I got to do this.
Yeah, so I started doing a rethink on that's something that you thought was not so profitable. But
Lenny and Squiggy from
Laverne and Shirley.
Laverne and Shirley were there signing autographs. Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees was there. I was like, and Mickey's still famous. He's still doing concerts, and here he is signing autographs. At one of the shows, Angie Dickinson was there, and Tony Curtis. They were sitting next to each other. Robert Culp from I Spy was there. What's his name? Kurt, Captain, from Star Trek.
William Shatner.
William Shatner was there. Yeah. He had a TV series on the air right then too.
Yeah,
he's a lawyer.
Kind of always been working. Yeah,
and then on the weekends signing autographs. So I've been around the country a couple of times going to autograph shows and signing autographs, and sometimes it's better than others. A slow day would be maybe like $500 or $600. A good day could be a couple $1,000.
Wow. Jeez.
So, part of me says, yeah, that's kind of sad. But another part of me says, it's just another part of the industry. You just,
Yeah, I mean, the one thing you're helping kind of, people that watched your shows years ago relive a part of that nostalgia, and they're really grateful for it. So
and they're happy to pay the money for a signed picture. I mean,
Horror High is part of that. I mean, I go to horror shows specifically because I was in Horror High.
Yeah.
And the people come up and they stand in front of you and they're kind of like,
they're in awe.
Yeah. Did you like being in Horror High?
They're like, hi, Pat.
Yeah. Sign my boob.
Yeah. Well, I had one of those too.
I can imagine.
Yeah. I got to lock my hotel room door. Everybody does, Also, Planet of the Apes has brought me into some shows too, because
that one I would have been. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because no matter how big your part is, I tell this to people all the time. If you were in one Crest commercial for toothpaste, people are going to find you on Facebook. They're going to find you on Instagram. They're going to find your email. They're going to find your home address, maybe even your phone number. I get phone calls from people, sometimes they just listen to you for a couple of seconds and they hang up. And you hear them saying, as they're hanging up the phone, yeah, it was him.
That's nuts.
Oh, it's crazy. Fandom is great though. I mean, these people love it. That's what they like. That's their hobby. Some people like trains. Some people like drugs. Some people like former child actors. So you just, go with the flow, whatever it is. So yeah. I got to say though, the whole syndrome of being a child actor is really the syndrome is really about being a child prodigy. And by prodigy, I don't mean necessarily any genius necessarily in terms of me, there was no genius. The only genius was I got to figure out how to get into it. And I got into it and it worked. For most kids, that's not going to work. And I told many kids that as they were in the back of my Uber car I was driving, and they were telling me that they loved being in Hollywood. They're going to make it. They know, yeah, you've heard this before from people, but I am going to make it. I've never seen one of those kids again. But there's also, the child athletes, that are in, they play baseball or Pop Warner football until they're in high school. And then after high school, they're in college and they may play it in college. They might not be able to get it in college, but now they've just spent their whole youth being a child athlete star, or a piano player. I knew a kid he was absolutely brilliant. We met in junior high and I was friends with him for years. The principal and the vice principal used to call us out to go to meetings for the local, like the Lions Club.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have us perform for the Lions Club, because we were special students that they had. And this guy was like a virtuoso pianist. Killed himself at 19 because he couldn't make it.
Oh, geez. Yeah, the pressure. Wow. All right.
Well, I was just going to say, this is your turn now, Pat, to flip. We've asked you a lot of questions. It's time to flip it. This is our mini feature.
Lighten the subject up.
Yeah. This is our
I'm sorry. I took you down a bad.
No.
I think that is absolutely fascinating and very informative. Absolutely.
Really. And I'm sure our, the viewer that asked will be really pleased when they get to see the answer there.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
It's really, a lot of this has to do with the parents. The parents aren't ready for this. They never are. Yeah. I think Kurt Russell's dad was an actor. Bing knew the ups and downs of the business. He knew how to teach his child how to deal with it all the way along. Ron Howard's mom and dad were both actors. They had been in the business before he was born. They were actors. And they knew what to make him expect, and he was able to sidestep all the problems to get to where he really wanted to be. I was a cub in a cage. I never went to any meetings. I never got to find out how the money was negotiated. I never got to figure out, I never got to play chess. If I take this part, this might happen. But if I take this one, that might happen. So, they played the chess. They left me out of the whole thing. In as much as I was always asking them, include me in the meetings. I mean, from 9 years old, I was saying, I've run my life up to now pretty good, which may sound funny, but, I was not being, I was being managed by my dad, but I got to where I wanted to be. But then I didn't know anything about the business. I was out performing for my friends,
So you'd been pretty industrious yourself in getting yourself into that position anyway.
I had been, but when I couldn't get an audience being on TV, I got my audience by, buying the best pot I could find and getting stoned with my friends and being silly in front of them, or taking chances and getting in trouble and getting arrested. And then coming out of jail gone, oh man, it was so cool in there. I had a great time. Nobody bothered me. I didn't grow up until I was 40, for Christ's sake. I mean, that's just the way it was. Yeah. And I still have a big part, coming. It's somewhere around the corner, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure it is.
It's entirely
the
possible.
struggles with not kind of, not wanting to be away from, not missing out.
It might be just me, but it never leaves you. It just never leaves. And I've commiserated with that with other former child actors who haven't acted for years, and they're the same. It never goes away. It's like there's always this hope that you'll be able to do something, move on.
Well, do you want to ask Milo? So this is our mini feature called Ask an American. So it's your turn to ask Milo a totally unscripted question. So they've got no clue what's coming. No,
all right.
A great one.
All right. Well, all these films that I've been in, all these acting roles, the science fiction films, and then you're an actor in all the parts that you've played. And I don't know, what, I know you're doing something right now, and it takes a certain kind of talent. And so my question is there intelligent alien life out in the universe?
Oh, nice.
I'm gonna go yes. I don't know if I necessarily believe that they have visited the Earth, so I wouldn't go that far. But I can't believe, with as vast as space is, with all the planets and all the solar systems, that we are the only planet to have developed sentient life. Like, I mean, I cannot believe that in all of that, we're the one place that's happened. So I think so.
I'm with you, and I'm going to play this back for my grandson so that he understands.
He tells Milo Denison said so.
I might have to give you a different name and title, but he will believe you. I'll make sure that he does. But even with all the things that the American government has said and shown that's out there, these incredible racing dots on the screen, and apparently there's aircraft carriers on both the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean in specific places where they get the activity, and they see these things every single day. They can't. Some of the pilots have said, this thing came right up in front of me, like it rose like an elevator, so I could see it. And the second I tried to take pictures of it, boom, it was gone. And they show this stuff and they talk about it. And the presidents are talking about it now, saying that, we've been briefed by the military about this action. And they changed the name from UFO to something else now.
So it doesn't sound quite so
they tried to shut it down for a little bit, didn't they? Like the whole like investigations of UFOs. They tried to shut down that actual whole program.
We don't know that it's money well spent.
Yeah, that it was still carrying on, because when like, even though you're saying, like, let's say a pilot says, oh yeah, I saw something and then I couldn't get a shot of it. Maybe that's just like partially the party line. Maybe they did get lots of shots and lots of footage of it, but they're not going to tell us that, standard public that, are they,
Right. And there's a theory out there that maybe Putin is being paid by the aliens to take over the world. But I don't know. I don't know
if I'm going to buy that one.
Yeah,
that might be a stretch. Yeah.
I just made that up, so I don't think it's true.
I definitely think, like Milo says, I definitely think there's
it's
other life elsewhere. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it'd be cool. I mean, it would be absolutely amazing to have that proven within our lifetime, to have like legitimate, like, hey guys, how you doing there? Actual contact.
Want to have a beer? You know?
Yeah, totally.
I've got the beer.
Yeah, absolutely. So come and join us.
Well, I'll have beer.
These days it's O'Doul's, but I do have the beer.
It still tastes similar.
It tastes like good American beer, like Budweiser. It's Bud Light without the alcohol in it.
Yeah. A friend of mine drinks O'Doul's. It's like, all right, teach your own.
It got to a point where I was being stupid. I wasn't addicted. I mean, I wasn't an alcoholic by any stretch of the imagination. I've never drank hard liquor ever. I mean, other than when I was like 9 years old in the restaurant, but since
as you
then,
should when you're 9 years old.
I know. I got over it. I went to rehab when I was 9, and the thing is, I could quit, and when somebody told me I couldn't quit, I was like, no, I could quit smoking too. And that's what I did. I quit smoking and I quit drinking beer, and I didn't have any, withdrawals from it either. It just tasted enough like beer that it could get by on a hot day,
Well, our next segment is the badly drawn bamboo. So now that you get to ask me a question, we get to share a picture that you drew of Kev here.
Yeah.
So let's see what you got.
Quite excited to see.
So now we can see your picture.
Okay. And here's how I did it. I woke up with this image in my mind in the middle of the night, and I sat down and I had a nice cup of coffee and some cream of wheat. And I looked at this piece of paper and I said, Kev, give me Kev. And I know that sounds weird, but
now I can die a happy man now.
Whatever works.
That was in Pat Cardi's dreams. Like, this is incredible.
That is impressive.
Wow. Yeah, push that a little closer. I'm just going to make you.
You just want me to get closer to you.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's pretty spot on. Yeah. I think that's the most accurate, badly drawn bamboo we have ever seen. That's really good.
I really am blown away. Like that's incredible.
Yeah.
You've given me slightly bigger eyes, but you did say that you used to do caricatures, didn't you?
So this isn't a caricature. This is different.
No, but you've emphasized the eyes a little bit, because I've got really tiny eyes, so that's cool. I've got to give that just almost like 0.5 out of 10, because it's that good. It cannot be a badly drawn bamboo. So it's like a 9.5.
That is the best rating ever received for a badly drawn bamboo.
There you go. Mm-hmm. There you go. Okay, can I take it down now?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, if you want, I can talk behind it.
Just that's where the mouth is and start kind of, working the. I'll
do this.
Yeah.
It's just like
start talking.
Although I look like I've been put on a pike a little bit.
A pike?
Yeah, like on a stick.
Oh, the neck there.
Yeah,
no, that's from the earphones.
Oh, of course, yeah. No, I see properly now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure,
yeah, that was in the picture I was looking at.
I'm like a floating kind of.
Yeah, you told me I didn't have to just do it from my head.
No, that's awesome. Honestly, there has not been a better drawing than that. That is.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So there's a long way to go then.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if anybody's going to top that one.
I don't think anyone will do a better one than that. That is, I mean, 0.5.
Well,
you've hit the bottom of our leaderboard for badly drawn. So that's an achievement.
Now, if I would have spent 10 minutes on it instead of 5, it might have been better.
It's pretty impressive skills there.
But, that's, to me, that's pretty legendary, and it does kind of lead us a little bit onto our next question as well, because I want to talk about your involvement in a couple of films which are fairly ambitious projects. You had Legend, which was obviously by Ridley Scott, and then Explorers, that was Joe Dante, was it?
Joe Dante, right?
Yeah. So both of those, you was involved in those in some capacity, wasn't you?
Right.
Talk a little bit about.
Can I segue into craft service here just a little bit?
You can
Yeah,
segue
absolutely.
whatever way you want.
Yeah. You know what craft service is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Generally, what people think craft service is it's the guy who makes the coffee, buys the donuts, and sweeps the sound stage. And that's definitely part of the job. That's the part of the job you want. But for years before you do that, you're working in the back lot and doing all kinds of labor functions. Like filling sandbags because part of the back lot's starting to slip down. Wherever there's like a show with a big crew, they basically put all their trash in a bag or in a bunch of bags, and then when they're done shooting, then you go around with a truck and pick them up and put them in another bag. And you start out by sweeping sound stages and cleaning toilets and doing all the grunt work that there is in a movie studio. So from being, from happily leaving acting to cleaning toilets in the sound stages, that's where I went. Which sounds ridiculous, but I did it for 10 years, thinking that somehow I'd be able to, meet up with somebody that is going to help me move forward. I was writing screenplays and submitting them everywhere and not getting anywhere, which may say a lot for my ability to write screenplays. But at the time, I just couldn't figure out how to get anywhere. So basically, I was doing that, and eventually, I did become the donut man. I was on the show Dallas. Do you know the show Dallas? Yeah, I was the donut guy on Dallas for 2 years until I had a falling out with Victoria Principal, or a falling in, I should say. Anyway,
she didn't like the donuts.
You know what they say? They say don't concentrate on the donut. Concentrate on the whole. Anyway, so one of the other things that we do is I specialized in special effects. So I liked being around construction, and whenever they had to build something special for a show, I would be involved in that somehow. Generally, either cleaning up after them or moving things into position so that they can work on them. And if you have half a brain, generally you can one up the guys who are trying to figure it out and help them figure it out, which is kind of where I was, because I was like a movie maker from the time I was a little kid. I already had all these ideas about the way things should work. And in special effects, I mean, nobody ever gave me a feeling of second doubt. When I'd say, something, if you had like 6 springs up here, those cigarettes would fall down instantly. And they'd look at each other and go, yeah, let's do that. So I always felt pretty confident working around the special effects people. And they always gave me, other work to do. I got hired into a situation where they needed a leader for 6 craft service people that were cleaning the facility where they made all the appliances for the movie Legends. Okay. And so I was in charge of that. But once Rob Bottin, who was the creator, he was the lead sculptor. Once Rob,
a great makeup effects guy. I mean, absolutely.
And Rob was a fan. He knew about Horror High. He knew about Let's Kill Uncle. It's About Time. He watched when he was a kid. And so Rob always wanted to talk to me. When he wasn't doing anything. He'd come over and hang out with me, and I'd be standing there with a broom and going on about my fabulous career. And eventually, I started doing things like mixing all the foam that was going to go into the molds, or baking the molds, or once they had inserted all the foam into the mold, I'd make sure that I got in the oven and it was at the right temperature and it came out at the right time. I'd measure for when it's cool to be able to tell the sculptors to come back and open it up, and help them open it. So it was just all kinds of things that were related to getting it done. I didn't sculpt anything. I wasn't an artist. I was a, kind of a technical guy, sort of. But I did that on Legends, which was a lot of fun. And it was an interesting time in my life, as a matter of fact. And right after Legends, I think it was after Legends, which was shot in England, by the way. All the work was done in Pasadena, California, for all the appliances, for all the different characters in the Legends. If you've seen it, it's a fantastic movie. The artwork in it.
Visually, it's beautiful. Like the visionary from Ridley Scott is amazing.
It is. It is.
It's such an ambitious project at the time.
Right. And what happens to the girl in that just blows your mind.
That's Lily, isn't it? Yeah, that's there's Lily and Jack.
Yeah, definitely.
Tom Cruise and Mia.
Tom Cruise, right. He came down and visited us one day, which was really cool. For us anyway, at the time, before we really knew Tom Cruise. He was probably 17 at the time, maybe 18. And then he became Tom Cruise, and it's a whole different story.
Tim Curry, Milo,
if you want a really good interpretation of a character, like a sinister character, obviously Tim Curry's classic at doing that, but he plays Satan in the movie, and it's just his facial expressions, considering he's got all this, tons and tons of fabulous makeup on.
Yeah.
I think in that film, he's probably the standout in that for me, I think, to be honest.
Oh, he is.
Adding it to my watch movie list. I'm adding it right now. Movies.
Yeah, do watch it. Yeah, you'll like it.
And Explorers, because obviously that had two youngish not child actors, but two young actors, which was Ethan Hawke and River Phoenix.
And there was another one too.
So did you work under Rob Bottin on that as well?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and that was both in the shop and also on the soundstage.
Right.
I couldn't work on the soundstage in London because there was no purpose to send Americans over there when there's a lot of great makeup people there. But we just made the pieces that they applied. With Explorers, we actually our team was able to do that work, and there was some special effects work on the set itself, pulling wires to make characters move. So we'd have an actor in a face, and eyeballs were up here on little extensions there. Those were where the eyeballs were. And so we had to operate these eyeballs, and sometimes I think they had the eyeballs, the cheeks, the ears, and they had little pull levers that you would make it happen, make it work.
Where were you located for this? Did you literally just ride underneath, or was there like a little bit more?
These are like a brake line inside of another, what the brake line's like? It's like inside another piece of flex metal.
Yeah, like on
it was bike, like that, and those things would be 40 feet long, and you'd be at the other end of it looking at the character, and we had plenty of time to figure out what levers what they're doing, and then you'd rehearse with them talking so that you could actually make it work with their dialogue. And it was cool. It was very cool. Yeah. And helping to put on like their fingers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember that one from when I was a kid watching that one, actually.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was going to really be a fantastic film. The artwork in it is great. All the art that was put into it was great. I thought the storyline, they could have done a little more with it, but I don't know. Maybe if I saw it now, I'd feel differently.
Well, from a kid's point of view, it's a great, build a, spaceship out of this little thing and
off you go. Yeah. You just build it and you go.
Yeah. That's all you need to do.
So Milo, when that came out, you was probably about 10 or something?
Something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I was only just, both Legend and Explorers both came out in 85, which I was born. So I was,
I'm a little older than Kev.
Yeah, I know. I'm just putting it out there. I'm the pup here.
Add your years together, and that's how old I am.
No, I don't know. Actually, I think you come under there.
My birthday's coming up.
It is, because we're recording this, and it's going to be your birthday tomorrow.
That's right.
All right. Well, before we talk about your birthday, desert island items. So, if you could take one thing with you on a desert island, what would that be?
Definitely Pam Anderson.
All right.
I don't care how old she is.
and do we need to ask why?
Let me just say this.
Why would you take Pamela Anderson on the desert island with you?
Why would I take Pammy? Mm-hmm. Why would I not?
Are you watching the Pam and Tommy, that series?
I haven't seen it. No, I haven't seen it yet.
I have not yet.
I probably will look at it, but I've seen the real thing in person, so
Oh, really? Well, ignore the TV show. Yeah, tell us about your experience meeting Pam Anderson then.
Yeah.
I spent my life being around movie stars and politicians, and I knew President Reagan. I worked with Clinton, doing very peripheral kind of stuff, but nothing really phases me. And then one day I went back to my computer. I was doing teleprompting on a live daytime TV show. And I stepped back to the computer and I looked up and I saw this beautiful, perfect, naked Pam Anderson standing right next to my computer. And I blinked, and when my eyes opened up, she wasn't naked anymore. She had clothes on. And I couldn't say anything. I was like, oh my God. It's Pam Anderson.
You're just literally starstruck by, or something.
I was totally starstruck, and she just kind of smiled, and I was like, hi.
Sure, she was used to it. She's used to it. Like, okay.
I didn't do anything that I promised myself I would do if I ever met her.
Yeah, and they had all these things in hindsight afterwards. Just like,
damn, why did I not say
wish
that?
Took it for a meal or something.
Exactly. You don't need those rock stars, baby.
Exactly. Come on.
But my daughter went to Pepperdine University, and I think her kids were going to Pepperdine, her boys. And I don't know that for a fact, but I just think so. She lived next to the Pepperdine campus in Malibu, and which overlooks the Pacific Ocean, which is why my daughter went there. And I got to tell you, whenever I called my daughter at Pepperdine, I didn't hear the sounds of school. I heard the sound of ocean. So I don't know how long she was actually in her classes. In any case, so Pammy was there for almost all their basketball games, which I, had never really wanted to go to until I went one time, and there she was. And I was like, okay, let's sit up here, like just above Pammy,
Let's start attending more of these.
And my
games.
wife would be, no, we're going to sit down here.
If anyone needed to know where Pat Cardi was that particular time at night, he's still in a basketball game.
If it's a basketball game, you can meet Pat Cardi, but unless he's like sitting behind Pam Anderson, smelling her hair.
Sitting downwind of her as well.
Yeah.
Everything.
I started being a dirty old man. I started being a dirty old man when I was 8 years old. So
that's the nice thing about aging. I've told my wife that too. I'm like, one thing about getting older is that I will be able to get away with being a dirty old man. Like now I can't get away with it.
No,
give it a few years, I'll be able to.
Well, there's a whole new definition.
It's over in about 3 years, Milo. You just like, is it your 50th coming up soon? Is it?
Yeah, getting there. Yeah.
Sorry to remind
really?
You. No, it's not. He's exaggerating.
Pam Anderson for me was in barbed wire for me, which kind of I was like, obviously Baywatch as well, but I mean. Yeah, barbed wire was the one. It was like, that's pretty hot. But talking of like hot things and other things like that, we also like to ask people about cheese on the show. So Pat, what is one of your favorite cheeses?
Well, I eat a lot of Swiss cheese, but I also eat a lot of provolone. And when it comes to Mexican food, there's always cheddar. And I'm not really a connoisseur of cheeses. It's just if there's cheese there, I'll eat it. I wouldn't know what it is, but that's about it. One friend offered me cheese one time that literally smelled like some little kid's socks. I mean, it just filled the room. I don't know what it was, but it was terrible. And I think I embarrassed him. I said something out loud about, what is that smell? This is awful. And I wasn't even looking at the cheese. I thought there was something in the room that, died. And
what about Mexican / kind of Spanish cheese?
There's like those like
it's a German
cheese and
it was a German cheese.
I guarantee I could ask my wife right now and she would probably know what that cheese was. She eats those nasty, disgusting, stink up a room cheeses. They're
sticky
awful.
cheese.
Probably some form of Stilton, because Stilton's always an easy one to go to for a big smeller.
Sure. There's different varieties of it, but stinky cheeses.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Smells like a kid's wet socks.
Some aged Italian
I think I know. I think I know the one you're talking about.
Oh, I know the smell. I mean,
I don't know. You got kids in the house. You can
smell it now because the smell of the cheese was that ingrained. It's like, think of it.
Well, when I was growing up, we were poor, and when we lived in New York, we were poor in particularly. And I wore the same socks so many times that. Literally, they would stand up by themselves. Literally, this is not a joke. I mean, literally,
believe you. Yeah.
They were hard and crusty, and I would still put them on because those were my socks. And so my parents, they weren't really clued in. They didn't get it at all. They didn't understand about kids.
So you just wash them in the sink or something?
I didn't take baths. We didn't brush our teeth. I mean, my teeth are horrible. And there was just, no accounting for it. I think my mom was still living in the outback somewhere as far as she was concerned. And my dad, well, they were Italian, So they don't start using Brill cream until they're in their teens,
Yeah. All right, Pat, we should probably wrap it up because we've been chatting for a while, but
okay.
Honestly, love hearing your stories. And I probably could sit here for another hour. But let's wrap it up. So,
okay.
Before we go though, are anything that you're working on, any upcoming projects that you want to mention?
Yeah, right now I'm working on a memoir.
I came up with absolutely read that just from the stories I've heard so far.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, the dirty stories are in it too.
Excellent.
I came up with this idea about 10 years ago because I thought I had a grandson and I was like, I want him to know me. My dad died when he was 68. My brothers died before they were 68, 67 and 64. And so there was a chance back then that, I had heart problems. I had 2 heart attacks. I have stents in there. I had cancer and lost an eye. And I thought, with a little luck, I might make it to 70. Well, I did make it to 70. But back then I thought, I'm not going to make it. And so I thought, I want them to know me. So I'm going to write the story, make a memoir. And so I started doing it and then I put it away. And during when the pandemic started, that became my pet project that I was doing, on days when I had nothing else to do. And now I'm working on it furiously, trying to finish it. So if God willing that I'm available and it comes out, then we'll do another show and I can talk about some more stories and tell about the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Promote the book a little bit.
Really would up for doing another.
And I haven't written and I haven't written a screenplay in probably 30 years. And back then I wrote 13 full screenplays, sold one, but they never made it. And I also wrote a lot of storylines for the TV show Quincy and did research for Quincy for about a year. And so I haven't written anything like that in a long time, but I started to write one during the pandemic. And I have a really great idea for an extremely low budget film. And I've had to put it away and tell myself, no, let's finish the book. Then we'll get back to that. But I've never directed a movie. I directed a lot of infomercials, corporate films, live TV with regard to a show called, I forget what the name of it was. It was like a live auction show that we were doing for years. And then also I've directed the Catholic Mass on TV for 30 years, which was my way of getting out of going to church and kneeling down. But it was a good job. It was like a lot of fun. It was free. I liked it. So where was that going? I just went into the.
Are you going to direct your script? You mentioned script,
so finally directing a movie.
Yeah.
And I figured that since none of my films really sold, they probably weren't any good. So I'm writing a new script and I'm very excited about it. So we'll see what happens. It's not about a former child actor, by the way.
Okay.
And what about, is there like Facebook or anywhere that people can get into, like,
please,
get in touch with you, but yeah.
Yeah. If you have the opportunity to be watching this and for any reason you want to get in touch, ask any questions or just say hi or tell me, what you thought of one of my shows. A lot of them are on YouTube. A lot of things are on YouTube, but on imdb.com, if you haven't heard of that, IMDb, internetmoviedatabase.com. Anything you want to know about movies, TV, actors, directors, writers, production, it's on imdb.com. Go there, put my name, Pat Cardi, in there, and you'll see all my credits, what I've done, everything I've acted in, directed, and so forth. So that's that. I'm also on Facebook. Go to Facebook and type in Pat Cardi, and we can friend each other. Unless you eat babies or something like that. That's, because I always check out, your background. As long as you're semi-normal.
Your surname's Lecter or something like that. I'll pass on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well. So
no,
I always answer everybody's emails because, you know, when you're this far into the game, it's sort of depreciating the numbers of people that come. So I do answer anybody that asks me a question. Let me know you saw this podcast or this broadcast. As long as you let me know that. And also anybody that wants,
like, did you watch me on the show with Milo and Kev? Nope. All right, I'm not responding to your question.
It's like, yeah, done it. It's a non-starter. Like,
well, some people they want to hide themselves, but they want to friend you, and so there's no information where they went to school, where they live. You know, it could be a creep down the street. I don't know. You know, so if they don't have any information and haven't made any posts, then I just don't friend them. I used to send them a message. You know, it's like, there's not enough information on your page for me to gauge whether or not I want to be your friend.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great.
And anybody out there who watches this because they're interested in filmmaking and they're wondering if they can make a movie on their own, you can. And the guy to be watching on YouTube all the time is Jay Horton, Horton. Horton.
Yeah, I reckon other people are right. Yeah.
Jay Horton on YouTube. He has a great channel where he talks about a lot of different aspects of filmmaking, but mainly he talks about distribution and he talks about how to make money back on your film. So if you're going to make a movie either with 16 millimeter, 35 or video, or just even your iPhone, which is something I'm considering doing, watch iPhone 13 movies on YouTube and listen to Jay Horton.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's important because I'm sure Kev can vouch for this as well. But like, I know a lot of people that are, you know, making films and working on stuff, and they're like, they want to create this thing that they think is brilliant, but then they don't think about what's going to happen to it after that, of like how to actually make your money back and how to distribute it, stuff like that.
See,
so
you need to know all that ahead of time.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's a lot of that you need to start doing before you put one frame.
Yeah,
into that camera.
Yeah, those stepping stones and the processes.
And and it's a very competitive industry nowadays too, because equipment is so accessible to people. So
and you have to make friends with guys like you guys, because as much fun as this is, it's also PR. You know, I'm getting to know your audience. I'm getting to know your friends, and we'll talk again. And if that film ever comes out, maybe you guys will pay the $2 or $3 it takes us to watch my movie.
Absolutely. Definitely would.
Yeah. No, that's, you know, thanks for joining us, Pat, because obviously it's been an absolute privilege to have you on.
It's been
fun.
Got
to thank our viewers as well, you know, for helping us to rip it up, because the people who put in their questions, some fantastic questions again. But obviously, yeah, it's your birthday tomorrow, so we have actually got to say happy birthday, Pat.
Happy birthday, definitely.
I think I'm going to leave here and I'm going to celebrate with a little
All
cake.
right.
Oh, I didn't know you were going to do. I didn't get any fake birthday item to Paul.
I put a little bit together. I was going to throw some cake at you, and I was just like, but you're not in the room, so.
No, yeah, I wouldn't be able to catch it. Is that a birthday crumpet?
Yeah, it's like a little almond thing. Look.
Oh, I love it. I love those.
I know that you're
pastry.
Not a fan of people eating in front of you, so.
Yeah, you know that.
Because your brother does it, doesn't he?
I hope my brother's listening.
So, absolutely. Get him to watch and be like, yeah, see, look, this guy respects me.
Dennis, pay attention.
All right.
That's cool.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, Kev, what's coming up next on our show?
Yeah, coming up next on the show is the amazing Back to the Future and Freddy's Dead star, Ricky Dean Morgan. Absolutely great guy. I'm sure he's got some incredible stories, especially from his time as Data on Back to the Future. So yeah, that'll be an awesome one, I think.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. That should be a fun one.